Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. And welcome to our 100th episode. We're really excited about that. And we have 6 wonderful authors who are going to be speaking with you tonight. And let me see, we've got a bunch of comments already. Chris Chrisman said, good evening, Rob and Joan, and all the authors. Hi, Chris. Glad you're here. George DeSmuke says, I'm here. Send up the balloons.
We sent them up already. Didn't you see them?
Strike up the band.
They're coming across the Gulf right now.
And Paul Hollis says, hello, Joan and Rob, an illustrious group of authors.
Ooh, that's nice. That's nice. That's a good billing, right?
Yes, it is.
Anything you would like to say?
I just want to thank everybody for tuning into the show, whether you're watching it live or whether you're listening to it on the podcast. And thank you for getting us through 100 episodes.
Indeed. Want to remind everybody about the Voice of Indie podcast on Blog Talk Radio immediately following our show. Our show is going a little long this time, but you can still catch it if you go over there. At the end of our show, there is a little tutorial on how to get there to watch or to listen to that podcast. That's with Dean Weeks and Gary G's.
Yeah, but don't leave our show early. It's going to be at least an hour and a half long, and it might be longer.
Everybody's got a lot to say. We have lots of giveaways to do, too.
Yeah.
Chris
Christman says, congratulations on the 100th episode. And Caleb Pirtle says, a great moment for indie authors everywhere.
Everywhere. That's
our 100th show. Our 100th episode, yes.
Back to Voice of Indie podcast. Their guest tonight is
Steve and Beam.
Verwayne Greenhoe, and he's published by the Jetsons, apparently, by the Fresh Ink Group, published by them, and he's a very interesting author. This coming Saturday, 5:30 p.m. on episode Rewind is Ron Alexander from Florida, episode 70. 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, right here where you're watching or listening right now. And next Wednesday at 7 o'clock, we'll have Joseph Caribas. I actually used Google to find out how to pronounce that. Next week.
Should have looked up Joe Conchel before he was on the first time.
I should have. He's probably in there. Next week, March is March 22nd, 7 o'clock. Joseph is an author, a scientist, a physicist, a trucker, and a lumberjack. Well, those are actually all the jobs he's had. And he's actually had more than that. So he should be a rather interesting person to talk to. And he's got several books that are out. Want to say also, refer everybody to another podcast that's really good, and that would be Book World, The Great Escape with C.J. Peterson and Mike Clifton. It's every Wednesday at 1 o'clock Central Time here in the U.S. On YouTube, watch it at CJ Peterson, also on Facebook, but you'd have to go to at CJ Peterson on YouTube to find out, or send me an email. I can tell you.
And we have a comment from Patricia Celis de la Cruz. You got this. Good vibes. Good.
Thank you. We need all that we can get. Why don't we, before we get started, why don't we go ahead and do this mug giveaway? Okay.
All right.
Do you want to bring? Okay. We are going to have our first giveaway, and the first person to email is going to win this mug. The first person to email carternovels@aol.com will win a Meet the Author coffee mug.
Yay.
Okay. Isn't that exciting? You'll be able to drink coffee again. Okay. So if you didn't tune in early, you may not be able to do that.
All righty.
So let me get that off of
I
there.
will.
And I guess we ought to bring our guests in.
Yes,
what do you think?
we need to.
Before the screen falls over because it's so heavy over there.
All right. Chris Chrisman said, cool mug. Thank you. Anna Spiritual Message said hello. Hello, Anna. Welcome to the show.
All right, shall we bring our authors in?
Lana Becky Jones said hello. Hi, Becca.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's Becca and not Lonnie, but
But maybe both. You
it
never
could
know.
be both.
Okay, here they come. Hi, guys.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
We have with us tonight
Hello.
Marjorie Deering, Tory Gates, Genaro Torres, Doug Gardham, Joe Congel. I messed her name up again. And JAMIL EFFEND. There's something about you, Joe.
I know.
Oh, what's
Go.
going on?
He called you go.
Go, Joe.
Go.
Yes.
I'm trying to be encouraging, right? Oh, wait. Yikes.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk with Joe first.
Joe, okay.
Yes.
Let's put Joe on the
So,
spot.
Joe, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
We're doing really, really well.
Well, good.
I think so.
Good. Good.
Now, what book is it that you would like to talk about tonight?
Well, I want to talk about book 4 in my Razman Crime File series. It's called Best Served Cold, and it'll be out in just a couple of weeks. It is obviously the newest one. It's also somewhat of a continuation from book 3. Anyone that's read book 3 kind of knows how that ended. And you don't necessarily need to have read book 3 to read book 4, but it does give you some insight as to what's going on in book 4 if you did read book 3. So it's very interesting, I think. It's another sports icon in the Charlotte area gets taken care of, gets taken out. This time it's a basketball player. In book 3, it was a NASCAR race car driver. So I'm just going to eventually get all the sports in the Charlotte market and kill somebody else.
So what is that going to include? Bowling and
Maybe, I may do that.
Pickleball.
Maybe javelin toss or something and have somebody
pickleball, maybe.
get that. Pickleball would probably be more my speed right now, yes.
I just wanted to answer L. Scott Shaw. She's listening from Belfast, Northern Ireland, and wants to know if she wants us to share this invite. And we are saying yes, please
Absolutely, yeah, sure. Everybody's welcome.
Yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, as far as the book itself, I mean, it is kind of it picks up where the last one left off, based on the murder that was in book 3. There is now a basketball player that plays for the Hornets. He's a brand new rookie sensation, and he gets taken out right before the season actually begins. And the gist of the novel is trying to figure out what happened to him. And of course, there's a couple other deaths along the way, and some things that tie back to the race car driver and what's going on between what happened then and what's happening now. Is it possibly a serial killer? Is it possibly a copycat? Could it be something different? I mean, that's really what we're looking at in this book.
All right. That sounds very interesting.
It sure does.
Yeah, I think it is. Hopefully everybody else will think that way too.
So we don't know how to say that.
I do know how to say
Okay,
that.
okay, you can read that one.
All right. It says, saludos and felicitaciones
Good.
para Genaro Torres desde Ciudad de Mexico. Abrazos. Hello and
Hola.
felicitations. Tomorrow. Mexico City.
All right.
Yes.
So, Joe, you have a book giveaway, right?
Yes. Yep.
All right.
Go ahead.
First of all, let's put up his personal information there.
Okay. I'll let you take care of that.
Okay.
That's your job.
All right. This is Joe's blog. Okay. Joe Congel Fiction Stories.blogspot.com. And you can find everything that you need to find on that. Isn't that right, Joe?
That is correct. Yeah, there's a link on every one of the blog posts how to get to my books.
Okay. And
Yep.
so that's JOECONGEL and then Fiction Stories. So, and the first person to email Joe at jc.razman@gmail.com is, and that's RAZZMAN, will get the book of their choice.
An ebook of their choice.
Yes.
That's right. So you can go to his link there, and you can
This link.
pick one out.
Yep, that email. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, make sure they get the dot in between there, so it's jc.rasman.
jc.rasman.
We're very
At
important.
gmail.com.
Otherwise,
Yes.
we will not.
We'll get there otherwise.
Yeah.
So, Joe, what else do you have cooking besides Rasman?
Yeah, well, as soon as this one is out, I'm going to go full head of steam into a Magnolia Bluff Crime Chronicles book. That's coming out in September. It'll be book 16, I believe, of that series. And so I'm introducing a couple of different new characters in there, and of course using the characters that are already there, assuming there'll be any alive by the time September rolls around. Because as we know, everybody that's writing the book seems to kill other people off.
So pertaining to that, Chris Chrisman wants to know, are you a sports fan or a sports hater?
I'm a sports fan, but I'm mostly a baseball fan. So I probably won't kill off any of the major league or minor league baseball players.
Oh my goodness.
It'll just be the other sports.
Dave Murray says, Joe, you talked about a story based in Cooperstown. Is that still planned?
Yes, actually, that story is basically done. I just put that book on the book back burner because the Magnolia Bluff Crime Chronicles opportunity came up. So I decided that I was going to spend my time working on that instead of that particular one. I did need to get book 4 out in my series. I mean, the Cooperstown story was a Rasman extra, if you will. So it really didn't have to come out immediately. It's just something that I felt I could put on that back burner so I could concentrate on the Magnolia Bluff book.
Awesome. And I think that you saw that Linda Pirtle said you'll love Rasman.
Yes. Thank you, Linda.
Yes. And that's true.
Right. Joe, you have a blog. It's a really interesting blog. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Well, my blog, I do a lot of different things on there. I mean, I talk about some of my personal journeys in a couple of the blog posts I put up there. I talk about other people's books, promote other people's books on there. I talk about writing in general, the writing life, if you will. So it can be something different every week. I generally do it about every 2 weeks, roughly, twice a month. So it may not be exactly 2 weeks, but it's twice a month. And like right now, I've got one up there that talks about genre be damned, I guess. It's really the best way to put it is the title. And it just talks about, my feelings on how I used to look at what I wanted to read versus what I will read now. For years and years and years, I was just a mystery guy. That's what I would read. That's what I wanted to write. That's what I wanted to read. I really didn't give a lot of extra other genres a chance. But through people I've met on Twitter that are extremely talented writers that do not write mystery, I dipped my toe in the pool, so to speak, and found a lot of great stories there. So it kind of talks a little about that blog post is up there now, talks a little bit about my journey and ideas on how I came to be a little bit more open to reading different genres beyond mystery. So
that's great. And would you like to venture out even further?
You mean as far as writing or reading?
I mean, as far as writing.
As far as writing, I don't know. I mean, the Magnolia Bluff book is going to probably be the first time I've gotten closer to a cozy than I'm used to. It's not going to be a complete cozy. As a matter of fact, CW and Caleb the other day and Linda were really kind of calling it more of a brosy, I guess, than a cozy, which I guess is a thing. So that's a little bit new for me. As far as beyond that, I don't know. I wouldn't mind doing some horror stuff. I've got a couple of short stories. Matter of fact, you can find a couple of them on the blog if you go back far enough, that are more along the horror type genre. But beyond that, like I'm not a guy that's going to write that's going to write fantasy and sci-fi. I think they're great genres, and I respect the folks that do write those. But I'm not someone that can write those, and I'm not even going to pretend that I can, because it's just not my wheelhouse. I prefer to write the mysteries. Now, read those genres, and again, if you read the most current blog post, you'll find out why I decided to do that. But as far as writing them, probably not. So.
Yeah, I love science fiction and fantasy, but I find I don't think I could write it.
Yeah.
Either.
It's just too much, and it's too high of a word count for my comfort. So I don't think I'd ever finish the book.
Caleb Pirtle says, Joe, I believe there are only two genres, good and bad. It's all about the story.
Yes, and I agree with that, and that's really what that blog post is about, is how I came to think that way, because years and years ago, that's not how I thought. I just wouldn't venture past mystery, suspense. I mean, it was more than just mystery. It'd be suspense, crime fiction, that kind of thing, which is really where my heart lies when it comes to writing and reading. But I found so many great stories by so many great authors out there that I connected to through Twitter. And that's really what opened my mind on that, was seeing what other people were producing and giving it a try, and actually surprising myself for really getting involved and engrossed in those stories. So yeah.
Dave Murray wants to know, what's a cozy?
Well, cozy mystery is going to be a little bit less violent than your standard mystery.
It's usually not a detective.
Usually not. It's going to be more of somebody that kind of gets roped into that. They could own a bookstore, and they're just a lot nosier than maybe the normal bookstore owner, and they become an amateur sleuth along the way. In my Magnolia Bluff book, my character is a retired New York City policeman that relocates to Magnolia Bluff, and then kind of things ensue from there. But it's a lot of times a cozy is going to have a dead body, but not necessarily how it happened, graphically. So
think of Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly Murder, She Wrote. Yes, exactly.
Oh, Linda Pirtle said, Linda has two comments. She said, cozy mystery as a woman sleuth, crime occurs off stage.
Yeah.
That's like Murder, She Wrote.
Which I guess is why mine's a brosy.
Because it has a male.
It's got a bro. Yeah, it's got a man.
And Linda also asks, where do you get your ideas?
Oh, from everywhere and anywhere. The idea for book 4 with the basketball player, that just came out of me driving around the city of Charlotte for completely unrelated reasons. And I drove by the Spectrum Center, which is where the Charlotte Hornets play. And it just got me thinking, what if we found a body? What if it happened to be a professional basketball player? What if it happened to be a rookie sensation that never got the opportunity because of what happened to him? And that's kind of where that idea sparked. And then I decided, well, let me tie that back to the other book where I had the NASCAR rookie sensation in that one. So they can really come from anywhere. They really can. And that is probably really what I do most, is I just drive around and the ideas kind of come to me as I'm driving around a lot of times. I don't just sit there and start thinking, I need an idea, because I never get one that way.
But you do watch the road, right?
Yes. Well, just for instance, I woke up at 3:00 this morning and needed to rewrite something in a chapter, and I didn't think I was going to have to do that until it appeared in my dream, I guess, that I needed to fix that. And I didn't even realize it was broken. But now it's so much stronger. But the first thing I did when I got up this morning was do that. So I guess they just, like I said, they just come from anywhere. I mean,
Linda Pirtle says, all the female characters in Magnolia will fall in love with Brandon, the brosy man.
Brandon's the name of my character, yes.
Yep, it's funny.
Yes, it's actually pretty funny. I've never heard brosy before, but it makes sense now.
Yeah, well, that was C.W. Hawes. He's the one that told me that. He said it's more of a brosy. Okay.
So, Joe, you've got about a minute left. Is there anything else you would like to share?
No, just if you haven't had an opportunity to read the Razman books, or you're not sure what they're about, the very first one, Dead is Forever, just has to do with, it's really the backstory of how he became a private detective, because that's not what he did. He was an out of work appliance salesman in that book, and by the end of that book, he was a private detective. Well, he was on his way to becoming a private detective. He really wasn't yet. He was an amateur. And then when you get to the books after that, he's really become a snarky, wisecracking kind of private eye that's really good at his job. But it took some time to get there. There's a 3-story bridge, if you will, that I call it, called the Razman Chronicles. It kind of takes you from book 1 to book 2. That really explains that arc of how he became a good, solid detective in book 2. In book 1, he was an amateur. But I didn't want to write an amateur series. I really wanted it to be a PI series, a PI crime story series. So I needed that in order to really make that work. So, and then as you continue on, yeah, you can read them all standalones, or if you read them all together, it just makes it more fun.
That's great.
Great.
That is really great. Thanks for the explanation. I'm sure that'll be helpful.
For sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. We're going to take this opportunity to take our first commercial break. And when we come back, we'll be talking with Marjorie. So hang on. Don't go anywhere, you guys.
Quick word from our sponsors. Welcome back, everybody.
So now we'd like to introduce you to Marjorie Deering.
Yes.
Hi, Marjorie.
Hi.
Why don't we put her up full screen? Let's let everybody see Marjorie really well.
She's hiding.
There she goes. This
There she is.
backstage is busy today.
Busy backstage, and our stagehand quit, I think.
We had to look for that.
So that's Marjorie.
Yes. And Marjorie, let me get your email up right away.
Okay.
Okay. It's marjoriedeering99@gmail.com. And I do want to spell that so that you'll get Marjorie's name spelled correctly. MARJORIEDOERING. So, Marjorie, what book would you like to give away in your book giveaway?
I would be happy to give any book of their choice.
Okay, good. That's good. And didn't you wanted to do a reading? Would you like to do that now and tell us which book it's from?
Sure. It is from Deer Crossing. I decided, being the first of the series, that's the place to start. So I will get right on with it then, and I will try to keep it short. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Turning into the farm's driveway, Ray and Neil saw Dr. Lewis, one of 2 local veterinarians, pacing beside Hank Kramer's empty pickup. The man was clearly frantic. The squad car skidded to a stop, barely avoiding him as he raced toward them. The vet poked his flushed face through the open passenger window. "Thank God, I thought you'd never get here." Ray stepped out, speaking to the man over the roof of the car. "What's going on?" Failing to get the vet's attention, Neil gave his door a gentle push into the man's legs. "Excuse me, Doc, would you move aside so I can get out?" Startled, Dr. Lewis lurched backward. "What? Oh, sorry." Ray asked again, "What's the problem?" From the direction of the barn, a bellow rippled through the pungent farm air. "That." Dr. Lewis pointed toward the weather-beaten barn. "Hank's bull is in there." "You're talking to a city boy," Ray said. "Isn't that where it's supposed to be?" "Normally it would be in the pasture, but I was coming to do an exam. Hank said he'd pen it up in the barn for me. And the problem is, it's loose, and I think Hank's inside." "You think, or you're sure? Maybe he's out in the pasture or in one of the outbuildings." "When I opened the barn door to look for him, the bull charged me. I only had a second, but I got a glimpse of something on the floor. His Adam's apple bobbed. I think it was Hank. You'll see something wrong if you check in his truck. The black pickup sat parked several yards away. Fresh logos adorning both doors. Kramer's Dairy was painted in neat lettering on either side above a picture of a Holstein cow. Ray rushed to the vehicle. The grocery bag's meager contents lay spilled across the bench seat. A pound of ground pork was warm to the touch. He picked up a can of concentrated orange juice, the contents sloshed inside. "It's thawed," he told them. "You see," Dr. Lewis said, "I know Hank, and that pinch penny wouldn't leave his stuff out here to spoil." Their heads turned as another bellow came from inside the barn. Ray drew his service revolver and began walking toward the barn. You two stay here. Oh, God. The vet clamped a fine-boned hand over his brow. That bull's a valuable animal. So am I, Ray muttered over his shoulder. I didn't mean... You be careful. That bull is extremely aggressive. Neil started after Ray. I'm coming with you. No, you stay put. Neil reluctantly led Dr. Lewis back beside the squad car. I hope he knows what he's doing, the vet said. That animal's a half-ton of bad attitude. Ray's distance to the barn narrowed to 40 yards. Then he heard a loud thud. He moved forward more slowly. Another thud followed, louder than the first. Stopping, Ray shouted, Mr. Kramer? No response. Hank? The rotting barn door shuddered and bulged outward. He heard Neil's voice above the sound of the animal ramming the door from within. Hey, look out, run! Pieces of wood flew like shrapnel as the bull burst through the door. Hooves digging into the earth, it propelled itself forward toward Ray. Stunned by the animal's size and speed, he fired a single instinctive shot. The bull didn't falter. He fired a second time as he spun and raced for his life. The earth seemed to quake beneath him as the immense animal closed the distance between them. Ray ran parallel to Neil and the vet's location. How many strides before he would be ground under the trampling hoofs? 6? 7? Ray's lungs strained. His heart pounded against his ribs. For an instant, he saw the vet, his arms flapping like some enormous bird. He couldn't make out what he was yelling. Neil's voice was clearer, but Ray couldn't make sense of it. A second time, Neil commanded more emphatically, veer and drop. Without questioning, Ray lunged sideways, his shoulder absorbing the brunt of the impact as he hit the ground. The bull's momentum carried it beyond him a heartbeat later. Ray hadn't seen Neil take the shotgun from its bracket in the squad car. He hadn't seen him take aim, but he heard 2 rapid shotgun blasts. The bull crashed, somersaulting in a kaleidoscope of tumbling flesh, blood, and saliva. The body heaved once, twice, then lay still. And I'm going to quit there.
Wow.
Oh, boy.
Used to be good.
So what happened?
Well, I could read some more, but I'm not supposed to.
Oh, okay. All right.
That sounded painful.
It did.
Wasn't a good day for the bull either.
No, it wasn't a good day for the bull. And the thing is, that particular sequence in the book might sound like it's far afield from the case that Ray is on, but everything is connected, which is one of the things that makes it interesting, because it makes the reader really think, okay, well, wait a second, how does this, there's a connection.
So Caleb has a question. He said, Marjorie has created one of the most unforgettable detectives in literature, Ray Schiller. Is he based on a real character?
No, he's not. I had somebody in mind that I visualized when I was writing about Ray Schiller, a very definite person, and people would know him, but I'm not going to say who it is because that's a no-no. You have to visualize him for yourself.
Right.
But it's a character that I just thought embodied all I wanted Ray to be. A very intense character. You know, he's a good man, but he's got his flaws. And yeah, that's what I wanted for him. And I started him off very negatively in the story. The first one, which I told you about the last podcast I was on, but he is introduced in the holding cell of his own jail after being in a bar fight. And he has a chip on his shoulder the size of a construction block. I keep saying, you know, it's, but people, as they read the story, will get to know he's really a good guy, and it becomes understandable why he is the way he is at this point. He's going through a really rough patch in his life, but it doesn't last throughout the story. I mean, his personality isn't like this the whole time. And I trusted my readers to get past that, and they have.
Awesome.
And Caleb, thank you for that wonderful comment. I really appreciate that. Wow. Makes me feel really good.
And Paul Hollis said, great read.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I was waiting for my eyes to get tangled in my eye teeth and I can't see what I'm saying, that sort of thing. You know? That old joke.
So the email, can you put the email back up again?
Sure.
go ahead and email Marjorie, and the first person to email is going to get a book of choice from Marjorie, from her collection.
Here's her email again, marjoriedeering99@gmail.com.
If you've already read the first one, you might want to get the next one in the series or whatever. So,
what did you say, Marjorie?
There are 7 of the books, and these are all standalone. It covers about 10 to 12 years in Ray's police law enforcement career. And they are standalones, but I would advise, just for total enjoyment, read from the beginning, because you get to see the development of Ray's characters and Ray's character, and it just goes better. It's more enjoyable, I think. And I've had readers say that. They say, yes, it's a standalone, but yeah, maybe you should start from the beginning.
So Deer Crossing is the beginning, correct?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Let's show the cover again. I really like all of your covers. They're all really
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I like that too.
Yeah.
It's really
That's one of my favorites. And the story is not as gory as that axe would have you think.
Well, that's good news.
A bloody axe always, you're like, oh, okay.
Well, I'm afraid that some people might look at that and go, oh, that's not my kind of book. That's going to be a slasher type book or story. And it's not.
Right.
But it's not cozy either, right?
Oh, no, definitely not. It's not cozy or brosy, Joe, or anything.
More of a crime suspense.
Yes,
detective novel. Yeah.
Definitely.
Let me see. Also, I wanted to put up that you can find all of her books on indiebooksource.com/books-by-Marjorie-Deering.
Also on indiebooksource.com, if you go to the search box and just put Marjorie in there, it'll bring up her link right away, and you can click right on it and go right to it if you can't remember that great big long email address or website address.
Right. And so
the series has been completed. So whatever you see there, if you want to read an entire series, it's all there.
So what's up for you next then, Marjorie?
Well, I tell you what, the last time I was on, which was a little bit over a year ago, I gave you a 1-floor elevator story.
Yeah.
Because that's as much as I had done at that point. But it is like, Joe, I'm going into trying my hand at horror. And this is a first for me. I've written some short stories that were horror, but this is my first try at a novel in that genre. And I'll tell you what, I tried doing it quickly. I tried doing 1,000 words a day. And by the time I got really near the end of the story, I went, no, this is not going to work. So I started all over again. And right now I am so pleased. I am so close to finishing. I have like 1 chapter to go. And then I have to do the formatting and the normal stuff that comes with that. And I will get it out there. And I am anxious to do it. I really enjoy this story. I'm pleased with it. Very pleased with it. I didn't think that was going to happen. But yes.
You answered my question. I was going to ask you if you enjoyed writing horror, and you just said you enjoyed writing it. So
I didn't like it the first time I went through it. Yeah, I wasn't pleased at all.
You got it almost finished, and then you did a complete rewrite?
Well, I mean, I started over doing edits, and I went, this isn't working, let's do this. This isn't working, let's do that. Maybe I should do this instead of such. And it all came together, pieced together beautifully. It made it more cohesive and a smoother story transition. I don't know what happened, but the second time through was just like, wow. I couldn't be happier with how it went.
Oh, good. I thought you meant you did a complete rewrite, and my brain was like, oh my God.
No, I did that with Deer Crossing when I first wrote that. That was a science fiction book. I think I mentioned that to you.
Yes.
That actually started out as science fiction, and it took me 7 years to turn it into what it is, which has nothing to do with science fiction.
That's so funny.
Go figure.
Yeah. Linda Fertile said, and I wanted actually to know this. Did you scare yourself on the first draft?
Only about my writing.
But the story didn't scare you?
It's a scary story, but I will say, again, it's not a book where every page is covered in gore and blood. I don't like that kind of horror. There is, maybe it's because I'm coming off a 7-book series of mystery, but there's mystery in this horror story. There's some romance in this horror story. And yes, there is horror and suspense, but it's horror done my way, which I enjoy, and I think a lot of people probably enjoy.
Yeah,
So I'm
sounds
hoping
really
for good results with that.
When will it be out?
Well, I don't know. Like I say, I still have to finish the last chapter and then the formatting, and I'm thinking about having a different cover done, starting fresh with that, because as I told you before, I don't have a title for it yet. I write the whole book, and the whole time I'm thinking, what should I call it? And I never know until I'm done. And then I struggle with it, and I have to hurry up because I want to get it out there. So
Has that been
right now I'm thinking about the horror. What did I write? My goodness. Oh, the horror within. I have several written down. So I'm leaning toward the horror within.
That's a good title. Yeah, that's a good book. That title
it might work.
Book. Yeah. That sounds really good.
So Marjorie, what do you ever do any book signings?
I did one, and I didn't get writer's cramp.
Oh, I guess that's
no, I don't generally do that. Like I say, I did it once, but I'm not into traveling around doing book signings. I'm a terrible self-promoter. I really am ashamed of myself. I should do more, but I just can't get myself motivated to do it.
I think it's difficult for most authors. Really I think that most of us don't really understand how much self-promotion there is.
Right.
And then we find out and we're like, well, this is not fun.
Right. I would much rather be writing than doing any of the rest of it.
Yep. That's right. Even if it's
the thing is, I think a lot of writers are more introverted, and that certainly doesn't lend itself to going out and signing books and being in the public and, calling attention to yourself. So I guess that's part of my excuse. You wouldn't guess I'm introverted, but I am.
Okay.
I guess most of us didn't think we'd have to know about marketing either, but
there you go.
Right.
Surprise. So it's time for our next commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to visit with GENARO TORRES. So stand by. Don't go anywhere, you guys.
Welcome back, everybody. And welcome to you, GENARO. How are you doing? Oh.
Around all of you.
There we go.
Now you can listen to me.
Yes.
Okay. What I was saying is that I'm very happy to be here, and I feel very honored to be around such amazing authors.
Oh, yes, I know. We do too. And we're very honored to have you here. And let me put this comment up. Poor Paco put this up a long time ago, but I was waiting for when you were speaking. Congratulations, GENARO, from Paco.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And I just wanted him to get his comment in there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm always very impressed when I'm hearing to authors that like fiction authors or science fiction, because I'm an author of nonfiction. So I'll share a little bit with you about it. My book is The Path of Continuous Growth. And during this time, I want to give you an insight about the book and also share with you or have a conversation with the audience, even with the authors here, if they have any question. But this idea of this book started to grow in my mind like 13 years ago. Having training traditional Japanese martial arts all my life since I was 4 years old, Karate-Do, the way of the empty hand, Jai-Do, the way of the samurai sword, like 15 years ago, and Aikido, and many of the concepts and stories that I share in the book are from my personal life and are related with self-mastery. And if you saw the book, it says it reads do, but it's really do. Do, which is a Japanese word that comes from Tao in Chinese, which means the path, the truth, the art. And that's precisely what I share in the book, how to vividly enjoy our path, our truth. And I share many concepts and martial arts wisdom to make it practical to people in their daily lives. And well, for many years, I wanted to write a book merging my background in Japanese martial arts and collaborating with leaders in diverse organizations. I've been a business consultant and an executive coach during the last 15, 18 years now. And I've been working with many, many different people in the United States as well as in Latin America. And fortunately, during all those years, I got enough experience to be able to share profound and practical concepts to focus on priorities and achieve what each person really cares about. It's about how to live our do, our path, our truth, and I strongly believe it's our duty to enjoy our own path of continuous growth.
Chris Chrisman said, I enjoyed reading Genaro's book, and his response to my email questions, a really nice guy.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, and you know, it has been very interesting the impact that the book has had, because I remember, I know my mom is listening to this, but my mom is not very good at in English, so I need to translate that later. But in the meantime, I remember that when she asked me, when I was writing the book, and she asked me, what would you say would be a success for you? And I told her, if I write the book and in 10 years or 5 years, someone reads it that I haven't ever met, and they do something, and because of the reading, they change something in their life, that would be a success. And then when I've seen the impact of the book since 2019 until now, I was like, just with one person, I was going to be very happy. And it has been by far more than that. So I'm happy. Yeah, I feel very, 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 very fortunate about it.
Yes, and the book is to help people.
Yes,
Really?
yes. It's really, and you know, the book it's full of stories about my experience in martial arts. Some of the experiences that have shaped my life. For example, there is a concept that in Japanese it's gambate. It means give your best effort in English. It's a very powerful concept. Even though we all know the importance of giving our best effort, sometimes it's complicated to keep our focus and motivation. When we realize our possibilities and how every challenge comes with its own solution, we all can attain whatever we decide. We just have to commit and never stop or give up. We can adjust our path, but never give up. And Gambat implies your life is in your hands. We all can have a direct impact in our results when we believe it. So yes, and also the book has a tool that I've been using with my clients for many, many years, which is the personal strategy canvas. If you log into the book, if you go to the website, dothepath.com or dothepath.com, everybody can download the personal strategy canvas for free. Just scroll down and you will see it, and you can download in PDF or in a Word file. Yes, exactly. Thank you. And just download the personal strategy canvas. And it's like the business model canvas, but for your personal strategy. And throughout the book, it's a self-reflection book, and I'm just empowering the reader and making the reader reflect on each concept of that personal strategy canvas through stories. So at the end, it's a call to action. It's not just a book to read and have fun. You will have fun, but it's also a book to work on, many of the people that have shared their experience, they said, Genaro, I was so engaged that I didn't stop reading your book, even though there was homework. But later on, I started the homework.
You skipped over the homework and went to the end. Well, let me read this for the people who are listening and not having the visual that the other people do. And to reach Genaro, it's at www.dothepath.com, dothepath.com. And also, let's see, we have a comment for you, actually. Caleb Pirtle says, Genaro, authors face challenges from every direction. We all need your ideas and guidance to survive from one day to the next. That's true.
Thank you so much, Caleb. Yeah. Yes. And and the path, if you think about our lives, the path is continuous. And one of the reasons I wrote the book is because I feel that I have practiced long enough to be in peace with failure. And I think that a lot of people that have achieved mastering something, they have made peace with failure. And knowing that it's very rare when results are great the first time. When we start something new, we literally suck at it. And with time, we become better and better. And what I recommend is to feed a growth mindset. It's like, okay, we're not that good yet in whatever skill we are training. But with training and practice, we will build the cornerstone of everything. As Miyamoto Musashi says, Miyamoto Musashi is a samurai and philosopher. And he said, the purpose of training is to defeat yesterday's understanding, which is something that I love. Everything is possible if you work on your patience, your perseverance, and clarity to accept your reality while continuing walking our own path.
Now, you've just written the one book. So if anyone would like the email, anyone would like that e-copy of the book, you can email Genaro at genaro@gtconsult.com. Genaro is GENARO at gtcconsult.com, because you have a consulting business, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a consulting business in the United States as well as in Mexico. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and also for the first person that
Linda would like to know if some of your stories serve as an inspiration to a teenager searching for a path.
Linda, absolutely. I started when I was 4 years old, and I'm sharing many stories even when I was a little kid. So I think it's going to be also inspiring for many people, not just for kids, but even for kids. I've been impressed in how the people that have read the book have connected, even if there is no relationship with martial arts. Because at the end, it's about self-knowledge, and it's about self-reflection, and it's about learning how to define our own definition of success. That's the book about.
Yes, and so DOE, the path. Well, let me bring your book up again here. DOE, the path of continuous growth is, so when you see that DOE, think of dojo, because that's the same word, right? Dojo comes from do, that do. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In the United States.
Yes, that comes from that do. That's why. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In the United States, we have. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, we have a delay here. What I was going to share is that, like Shodo, the art of calligraphy, or the way of calligraphy, or Sado, the way of tea. Yes, of course. It has a lot to be with our purpose and our duty in life, to put our body, mind, and spirit in whatever we're doing. That's our goal.
Oh, this is a good comment here, Genaro. I think you'll appreciate it. Chris Chrisman said, I followed Genaro's advice about my adult 33-year-old son, and it helped us both.
That's wonderful.
That's great.
Oh, wonderful. That's wonderful, Chris. That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing.
That is wonderful. And you were saying, if you only helped one person, look at how many you've helped. As you said before, there's 2 more that you helped. That's amazing.
Exactly.
That must be very gratifying.
Absolutely, Joan. And all the concepts that I share in the book will empower the reader to walk their own path. And everything starts with our openness to learn from the people around us. As in any sport, training, perseverance, and continuous interaction with others will really make a difference in our lives. So I really invite the readers, I really invite everybody to read the book and discover how. Discover your own answers.
Yeah, it really has nothing to do with being a martial artist, but it has to do with finding your path in life and applying the same principles that you would apply in martial arts to your life. Yeah,
absolutely. And has to do with put ego aside and focus on the real benefit for you and the people around you.
Oh, is that all? Just put your ego aside.
Very easy.
Sorry, I'm too busy.
No problem. And we just talked about how you have to promote yourself if you're going to be an author. Put your ego aside.
Forget everything else we said.
Yeah, no, we're just joking. Yes. Also, you have a podcast. So,
yes. Oh, thank you very much for that. Yes, the podcast is in Spanish. I'm planning during the year to start the podcast in English. So right now we have like 64 episodes. So if you are a Hispanic speaker or are bilingual or are practicing your Spanish, I invite you to listen to the podcast. It has to do, it's called in English, Virtues in Action. And it has to be with soft skills development. Every Friday, I launch a podcast of around 10 minutes. It's very practical, and the same as well as the book, it promotes self-reflection. I'm an executive coach, and as a coach, I don't give the answers. I'm just master the skill of asking questions. So
let me give that audience, let me give the audience that's just a listening audience that address for your podcast. It's bit.ly/VIRTUDESENACCION. I'm not going to butcher it Spanish. I'm just going to say virtues in action.
Okay.
Exactly, and that's in Spanish.
Yes,
and you know, I'm very. This is the first time that I'm shared this publicly. I shared that with Rob and Joan, and I'm traveling to Japan at the middle of April to start writing my second book. So I'll start writing the second book. And it has to do with the same concept.
Oh, exactly. It does? It has to do with the different...
No, it has to, because there's a concept that I share in the book, which is the modern samurai concept.
Yes.
And that modern samurai can be any person committed to becoming a better version of yourself at every single second. A person who is always looking for new ways to balance hard skills with soft skills, that is looking for continuous growth, to serve other people, an honorable person with courage and willingness to sacrifice for others and with an unremitting discipline. So I think that this concept of though at the personal level, I'm planning to start sharing how to do it at organizational level. It can be even in a relationship, it can be with a teamwork, but how to use this concept for self-mastery, because at the end, leadership is about self-mastery. A very effective way to live our own truth is by discovering what I really want, to empty my mind and freeing myself from ego. If people work on that, we will build a different world.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. We need to take our next break. It's a real short one, though.
Don't go away.
Thank you.
And when
Oh,
we
you're
come back, we'll
welcome.
be talking with JAMIL EFFEND.
People who like to read want to get their hands on books by Becca Jones.
Becca Jones, the breakthrough author who tells it like it is. It takes courage to tell a story when it reveals dark secrets. Becca Jones delves deep into the hidden world of sexual abuse. She tells what happened and also tells how she survived.
Meant to Be is much more than just entertaining. Meant to Be gives you a point of reference, hope to cling to, and becomes a guide for survival if you have suffered the same thing. Meant to Be, Becca Jones, a must-have.
Meant to Be is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites.
And we're back.
Hello, Jamil. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're really well. I have a question. How old is your little girl now?
She is 18 or 19 months. I think
Oh my
19 months this month.
Oh, boy.
Well, it's been a while. She was only 6 months old the last time you were born. Are you
Yeah, she
still
wasn't
just
even
as
walking.
busy? I know. I bet she's walking now.
Yeah, she's doing more than walking. She's climbing. She's doing everything.
That's wonderful. And you are still just as busy as you were before?
I would say more busy now. I got promoted at Quinnipiac University, so I have some new responsibilities, some new things that I'm doing there with work. Still podcasting and working on a new book. So
Where can people find your podcast?
So it's the Scribble Notes podcast. Anywhere you get podcasts, so Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, anywhere.
Okay. And it's just a podcast. You never do it as a podcast?
Yep, just a podcast, never live.
And it's called Scribble Notes.
Yep, Scribble Notes.
Okay. Well, let me put your website up really quick here. And can they find your link to your podcast there?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. If you want to find Jamil, you can find him at www.inspiredbyjamil.com, and that's INSPIREDBYJAHMIL.com. So look him up, see what's new with him. And also, can we bring up his email?
We can.
Let's bring up his email. And I know that oops, sorry. Okay. Jamil's email is inspiredbyjamil@gmail.com. That makes it easy. I don't even have to spell it again. I'm really glad. Let me bring up your book that you wanted to talk about tonight. Once I get out of the commercials, I can find it.
There you go. No, down. Right in there. There it is. That's the next one down.
Wait a minute. I have to pull it down further.
There.
Whew, here we go.
There we are.
Oh, nope. That's the old one. Here we are. Age of
Here's the
Imposters.
Yes.
This is your new book, right?
Yes, this is the new book, the final book in the High Council series.
Can you describe what's on the cover for us?
Yes. So on the cover of this book is a throne, and there's a crown sitting on the throne. It kind of is the imagery of the High Council, which in this book is based off of the gods who rule the world. So this is one of the seats that they sit on, and I thought it was really important because this is the age of imposters and the fall of gods almost.
So the title kind of gives it away a little bit.
Yeah.
What's happening in the book without giving away any spoilers?
Yes. So in the first book, War in the Fallows, there is a lot of the story focused around this element of these gods that were once kings and queens who then elevated to this next level, and their status and whether or not you can make it to being a god one day as a king or queen relied heavily on if you could live and survive. because a king or queen that was a god should not die in this world. And if you were to die, then you were labeled an imposter. And that's what you get to see in the Age of Imposters story in book 3, the culmination of all of the stuff we pulled together throughout the stories.
So we meet our hero again.
Yes. So in the first book, I like to say the first book was about growing up. So you follow King Aaron when he was a prince, and you watch him as he comes into his own. The second book was about learning to lead and him taking on this leadership role in the kingdom. And this third book is really about responsibility and the duty that it holds. So the story really watches him grow, and you finally get to this culminating moment in the third book of how far he has truly come from when you first meet him in the first chapter of the first book. So there's a lot that goes into it. You follow a lot of characters from book 1 all the way through their full journey. And instead of expanding, because oftentimes I think in dark fantasy, especially in the fantasy genre, we tend to expand the world and continue to grow and make it bigger. I wanted to really take a look deeper inside. So each character really has a moment to shine internally where you get to wrestle with who they were and who they are, and determine for yourself, like, what will they do? What could they do given the circumstances and the situations that they're facing in the third book? It really presses the characters to challenge their own beliefs, and it also challenges you as the reader to determine what would be the right course of action here. Because at the end of book 2, you're left in a very, very peculiar spot with King Aaron, and it really is the catalyst for the entire book 3 in the conflicts that unfold.
And so actually King Aaron is the hero. And if this is about the Age of Imposters, so that must mean that he's going through quite a bit of introspection and questioning. Is that fair to say?
It is. In the very first paragraph of the first book, he references imposter kings and how his grandfather had always told him about those imposter kings, those people who are not worthy of holding titles and being gods. And in this third book, you really do get to experience what it is to be an imposter and what it is to watch a world that's reacting to the elements and to the changes. So it was really fun. It was a really fun world to craft. It was really interesting to go back and see what kind of depth I could create for some of the characters that seemed on the surface in the first book and the second book. They really do get fleshed out in this third book, and it was a lot of fun to surprise folks. For anyone that doesn't know, I wrote the first book alongside my brother. We co-authored it, and the second 2 I wrote by myself. So by the third book, he was learning things for the first time about some of the characters that he had been a part of crafting and writing. So it was really fun to show him some of their backstory or give them new light or a new lease on life. And that was a really fun time for me as an author. But it also challenged me to think more about what are those moments in a story that would stick with you. I focused a lot of energy because these characters, they meant a lot to me. This was my first trilogy, and I wanted to make sure that they had a tale that other folks and that readers could really hone in on and grab a hold of. And I think it was a lot of fun, even after publishing, to hear what people thought about the story and about the characters and about how it was done, because the story takes a turn that I don't think anyone was prepared for. And by the end of it, you're left just wondering what could be next. And you're left wondering what happens to this world that we've just spent so much time in, and how different things may be because of book 3.
Now, will the readers find any dragons in your books?
So there will be no dragons. There are no dragons, unfortunately. I was real close to some
You almost
dragons.
did it, right?
So close. But there's no dragons. There are gods. There's a bit of magic, which is very fun.
Nice.
to experience for the first time. So there's some elements there that I think readers will really enjoy, specifically in regards to the religion and some of the offshoots that they experience in the first couple of books that really take a prominent position in this third book.
It's funny because that's what Rob asked you in the first book was, would there be dragons?
There you go.
There still aren't any.
Still no dragons. Maybe in book 4.
Yeah.
Maybe in book 4.
I mean, you know, Game of Thrones, there weren't dragons at the very beginning either. They came later on.
Yeah, you can always find dragon eggs in a cave.
That's what happened.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Caleb Pearl says, Jamil creates worlds far beyond my imagination, but I'm glad he gives me a chance to go places I didn't even know existed.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great comment.
Linda Pirtle wants to know which fantasy author inspired you to write in this genre.
So the author that inspired me to write, there were two. One was George R. R. Martin. I loved Game of Thrones. I loved the story he told. But the second was Brandon Sanderson. I dove into fantasy reading tons of Sanderson, and the worlds he created were so vivid. And I remember I read Mistborn and watching as he created this society that had its own way of being, its own religion, its own magic, its own character. It made me want to write a story and create a world that was unique. And I think the High Council series as a whole is a very unique world because of the very many kings and queens you get to meet and the different political structures of each kingdom, coupled with the way the gods all interact and seeing gods who live among the folks, live among people. I thought of Olympus a lot of the way of when I first started crafting the story. I thought of Olympus and I was like, what would it be like for those gods to sit on a mountain and come down and interact with their children who are kings and queens of kingdoms? What would it be like if they still had a presence here on earth, in the people every day could see them and interact with them? So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to create that. And then from there, how would others react if, in the first book specifically, if one of those gods weren't accepted? Who would go to follow them instead? And you get to watch that story play out. And by book 3, you have such a good indication of all of these different factors that you start to question who is right and who is wrong and how long have they been right or wrong and what is true. I like to think that book 3 reveals the truth. Book 2 makes everything more confusing. And book one tells you a truth that you know is a lie. So it's a lot of fun as you kind of break through and see it all.
Cool.
So Caleb would like to know, did you build your world before your first book, or do you build it as you write?
So the big pieces of the world were built as before I wrote. So I started off with my brother. We brainstormed really the religion in the background. Like, what did the society start? How did the society start? And who were those important figures that really shaped the way people see and perceive the world? What was the structure of gods and how did it come to be? And then as we built out, we started to think, what were the regions? So we built a map. And the map really dictated to us, like, what were the conflicts? Who were the kingdoms that had wars? We had this one land, it's called the Esterland. It's in the middle of the map. We said that's where war happens, in the middle of the map. Everyone has to cross through there. They have the most conflict. And we had some societies that were coastal, so they have a different sort of interaction. We had societies in the north that were more cold, so we were like, they have a different world. And then we split the world up in these different regions and said, what was that regional identity? And then from there, it really did start to flesh itself out more as we wrote. As we got further into book 2, it really started to become, how is the society working here? Like, what happens in the slip? And for anyone who's read book 2, they know that the slip is a very interesting place. And when you get to see the characters and you get to know that region more, you start to understand why that history mattered so much. And yeah, we did build. As I wrote more, I built more into the world, because it's just your curiosity gets sprung as you're writing more, as you're coming up with new things. It just continues to build for you.
Now, which book did you want to give away?
So I'm going to give away book 1. So anyone that hasn't read book 1 has an opportunity to get it.
All right. That's
let's get his email there.
Okay, we'll put up your email.
There we go. First person to email Jamil's email, inspiredbyjamil@gmail.com.
And you will get this one.
Yep.
War in the Fallows, which that's our hero on the cover, is
That's
it
the
not?
best cover.
It is.
Oh, yes. I know you were really proud of that cover.
Yes, I was excited to be able to put one of the elements that really made me excited about writing fantasy was that I could create a world that didn't have to live in the confines of our own. So I was able to put a black king on the cover wearing armor and being a royal king, in the same way that medieval fantasy is depicted on TV, but being able to have it be my way. So that was really important to me. There's a ton of characters with different backgrounds and varying identities throughout the story. But the story's not about their identity. The story is more about them as a person. So even in the first book, we have a character, his name's Asher. He has a husband, and the conflict that he experiences is not because he has a husband, but it is because he cannot have his own legitimate heir. So it does create this very unique perspective where everyone's accepting of him and his husband, but they are asking him to do something that is extremely difficult. So it's a really fun story, and I don't want to ruin that piece for anyone reading the first book. But by the end, you know what Asher ends up doing, and you'll feel it because he has no other way, and he knows no other way.
That's great. That's really great. And when I think of your king, I always think of an Arthurian king, because he's a knight and he's a king. And that's, that's what your king is, a knight and a king. But he's also a god. I don't think Arthur ever aspired to be a god. Well, maybe he did. But
one day be. My brother is actually the person who came up with the idea of these champion kings. Like, he really wanted this idea that the king should be at battle, the queen should be at battle. They should lead in that way. So we really wanted to build that into the lore. And as you learn about the religion and the religious figures from the past, they were all people who led wars. They led battles. So that became a part of the culture and a part of the identity that these leaders took on.
that sounds great.
It does. It's a fascinating series.
Yeah, and a lot of fun. And you make it sound really fun.
Yeah, you do. And you can tell you enjoy it.
Yes.
Thank you.
You can tell you enjoy writing.
You need to enjoy it, right? Are you going to write anything else? You said this was your first trilogy. Does that mean this series is now complete as a trilogy? Or will there be more in this series? What are your thoughts on that?
So this first trilogy is complete, but there are some stories left to tell. I was actually having a conversation with my brother a few weeks ago, talking about one of the many storylines that is left open that I feel like is not complete. So we actually are planning on writing that story and continuing a new trilogy set in the same universe, but for folks to be able to experience a tad different, because the characters we follow in the High Council series, they will not continue to be followed. And you can parse out what you think the ending might be from there, but they won't be continued to follow. There will be a new set of characters, same world, but with the repercussions of our current world. So that should be really, really fun to explore. And we already have some great ideas for how this new world will look.
Awesome.
It'll be a different point of view.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Excellent.
Well, we need to take our last break here.
Okay.
And then we'll come back, and we still have two more guests. We'll come back and talk to Tori Gates here in just a moment. So don't go away, folks.
Don't go away. Welcome back.
Here we are. Okay, Mr.
Hello,
Tory Gates.
Tory.
Hello there.
How are you doing today?
Doing just fine. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
Super
being
glad
on.
you could
We're
join
really
us.
glad that you
Yeah.
could. Let me bring up your book here. I don't know what is happening.
There you go.
All right.
This is fun.
Well, while you're doing that, I believe you're doing my latest Shake Hands with the Devil, and there you are. The basic thing is that this is the third book in the Sweet Dream series. It is a trilogy, but as was just discussed, it could be more. But it's been a very long trip to get the 3 books out, and it has been quite an experience over the last several years to get to this point. And it's pretty exciting to get to this area because now we've landed at a good place, and I can move on to other things, and we'll see if we come back around to it. But no, it's been quite a trip, and I'm very happy to be back once again. It has been very interesting, I'd like to say, to listen to these other folks tonight, because I'm enjoying the energy that everybody's getting to put out, because I am really hearing a lot of enthusiasm for the work, and that's really cool. And it's fun to just sit and listen to other people talk about what they're doing, because I have the same kind of energy and I have the same kind of thing. It doesn't always come off when you meet me in public, but it's just something I have enjoyed for so many years, and it's great to get to share it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's been really wonderful, isn't it, to just have this wonderful group of people and all dedicated to their craft and talking about it with so much enthusiasm and love. I'm loving every
It's
minute
amazing.
of it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I feel blessed that you're all here, and we appreciate it a lot. Actually, we've got Paul from Paul Rushworth Brown. If you watched the show that he was on, he's from Sydney, Australia.
Yeah, he was on a couple of weeks ago.
He was on a couple of weeks ago, and he writes historical novels. Anyway, could you tell us a little bit about, here, I'm going to bring your book up again.
Well, sure. I can give you a quick run through of it, because the Sweet Dream series, as I say, is 3 novels. And the elevator pitch begins with searching for Roy Buchanan. That's the first book. And the story is essentially this. It is about a Japanese teenager named Aki who has the ability to time travel, but does not know how to use it. She and her 2 brothers have a run-in with a very strange retired blues musician. And as he's noticed that the music has really taken them each in a different way, he offers to teach Aki's brother Hiro how to play guitar, and starts infusing the music into him. Aki begins to find her voice. She begins to start experimenting with her power, because it turns out that this fellow knew her late mother, whom she got this ability from. And she starts testing her powers. They start flying back into time through serious misadventures. They learn a lot about themselves. They learn a lot about the power of music. And from meeting some of the people who were legends of American blues, but also people that were never heard of or weren't known until after they died. And it was just a really fun story in which I just threw in a lot of different influences, and here is this story. And then it just wrote itself. Call It Love is the sequel, and that moves us a little further down the road. Aki's got a little bit more of a handle on her power, but her truth in terms of the life lesson she needed to learn was she cannot use her time travel power to fix things. She can't go back into the past to rescue her parents who were killed. She can't go back and make things right. She has to deal with what she is dealing with. So Aki is beset by a very real and not uncommon trauma, and she's struggling with it. And she joins her brother's second band, and people start to show up to help drive the music, and they become incredibly interesting, and they become formative for Aki. One of the characters is a very talented, almost prodigy-like musician named Kia, who joins the band and becomes so much more to Aki. And Shake Hands with the Devil jumps about 5 years ahead. And the basic story is Aki, Kia, the whole gang have gotten somewhere. They have made it. And all of a sudden it stops. And without giving too much of it away, the basic meat of the story is that Kia has disappeared and Aki has disappeared. And everything has ground to a halt. And essentially, Aki has lost Kia back in time, and she discovers an enemy within the ability to time travel that has power as well. And it becomes a battle to get Kia back. It also is about Aki really making a very serious decision of what are you going to do? It's that I have a decision to make, and we're not sure if she's going to be able to do it. And as the cover sort of shows what people are seeing, because the first two books have a kind of fairly typical Japanese teenager. She's not the most pretty person in the world. She's just as typical as you can get, except for her talent. The third book shows the dark side of Aki, and it's the fighting side of Aki. This is the proverbial sleeping giant that somebody has awoken, and it might not be good. So needless to say, it's been one hell of a trip for the last several years writing this and rewriting it. And I've just had so much fun because these were the books that I first started to write in 2007 when I decided I am going to do this. And they wrote themselves. The other works that I have written, all more commercial fiction, but they've really been a stretch of my ability. It's been a stretch of my sanity. And it's also a stretch of to see how good can I tell a story without forcing it. And I would like to think that I've got some good stories. I think they will be interesting to people. And the one thing, I remember this because I did an interview back in like 1999. I did an interview with Peter Garrett of Midnight Oil, and he made a very interesting comment about the songs on a particular album. He said something like, I hope that people can get inside them and get comfortable with them and get close to them. And I took that to mean that can work for a book. I hope people get to like Aki and her friends, her family. I hope they find the character that they identify with, that they get close to, and that's just going to bring you so much deeper into the story, and it's going to be that much more fun.
Oh, definitely.
Definitely.
I think that's what we want. All authors want is for people to understand and get inside and identify with somebody in the story. Hopefully, one of the protagonists. Not an antagonist.
Well, Aki is very much a protagonist, but she's really kind of a reluctant one at the beginning because she realizes that all of this is swirling around her. She has a power that she must keep secret. And it is something that it's sort of like she, as she grows older, realizes that she is living a kind of a double life. She is living a public life as who she is, even though she's an extraordinarily private person. And at the same time, she has to cover herself and really keep kind of secret that only the family and like basically Kia and, the person who becomes her mentor, they are the only people who really know. And she has to absolutely shield herself. So it's that sort of thing where you are out there in the public eye, but at the same time, the true self of you almost can't be shown. And that is a real struggle, which Aki talks about more in retrospect in the third book, because as she is in her search, she is looking back at herself and realizing that she has never been particularly comfortable with what she became. She doesn't hate it, but at the same time, it's that struggle with your life and with growing up, every single one of us. And it's sort of like, are we happy with who we are? Have we become all we can be? And do we grow? Do we progress? And in terms of characters, that's another thing that's really important for me in these books and in everything. All of my characters have a reason for being, even the side characters, even the person who just kind of comes in, comes out. They have meaning. Why are they there? And I am hopeful that as the characters go along, they become more real. And I've tried very hard to draw the characters and let the characters sort of develop themselves and paint themselves as they on the canvas. And I think it's come out, without bragging too much, I think it's come out pretty well. I think after a while, you finally learn how to do it.
So, Tori, what other books do you have or on, in the making right now?
Okay, well, what I have, first of all, my first book that was released, Parasite Girls, that is a self-release, which you can get on Amazon. That was commercial fiction. I followed that, and I got signed to Sunbury Press Books with a book called A Moment in the Sun, which I still think is probably one of the better things I've ever written. And the long story short of that is that too is set in Japan and delves into the world of the hikikomori, there are about 1 million people in Japan who, because they feel they cannot fit into an ordered society, drop out to the point that they don't leave their homes. I never even heard of this until I read about it on a BBC article, suddenly realized I had a story. And A Moment in the Sun is basically about a girl who self-isolated by choice, but then broke out of it. And it's about her really dealing with her past while she is trying to rescue one of her friends who has become the hikikomori. And it was a great story that just worked for me. And it seems to have struck with a lot of folks. So there's that one. And my other book, which I call it my fun book, because I really didn't think it was going to get published, but my publisher liked it. Live from the Cafe is kind of it's about living in a small town. It is about a very tiny village in Quebec. It is about a blink you miss it village where there seems to be almost nothing in it, but all of the life revolves around a former bar that has been turned into a coffee shop. And it is the world's most uncorporate, bizarre coffee place on earth. When you step into it, you step into another world. And it's about the people who run it, the people who work there. It's about living in a small town that is dealing with massive change, and it's how everybody changes. And what also occurs is the mysterious, sometimes famous people who just show up to have coffee and sometimes play music. So it was also me thinking about my growing up in northern Vermont and how close I was to Canada. The television, the music, especially the music that I heard coming out of Canada, was so formative to my growing up. And I just thought, what would it be like if I ran a coffee shop? And this was the result. So those are the things I've done. In terms of the Sweet Dreams series, everybody asks me, okay, book 3, Shake Hands with the Devil's done. What happens next? Is Aki coming back? And I always said that the 3rd book ends kind of, could end it there, but I don't. My whole thing is Aki and the gang needed a little while to grow up and to take some time off. And when we come back, if we do, this is going to be a job, but there are other stories that need to be told as Aki grows a little older, as perhaps another member of the family displays the ability to time travel. And where do they all go? Because there are so many stories that need to be told. Aki has so much more to do. Her brothers have so much more to do. The people that have come into their lives all have stories to tell. And I have basically written the 4th book, but I'm not a fan of it right now because there's not enough real action. It's just sort of this long thing. So I just have to beat it into shape. But long story short, out of that is I do have a new book ready to go, hopefully later this year. I am going back to commercial fiction. It is called Times Best Remembered. And it's essentially about 2 young women, 2 girls, actually. They meet in New York City on Christmas Eve in a very strange circumstance. They are 2 people from 2 completely different worlds. And in the short time they're together before one goes off to sort of get her life back together, something draws them together. And for the next several years, these 2 grow up and live their lives, but always looking in the direction of that other person, wondering how they're doing. And the question each asks is, why do I keep looking in the other direction? Why do I keep looking at someone looking for someone that I only knew for a few days. Why?
Very intriguing.
Yeah,
Caleb Pirtle
sure.
says, Tory stories prove you don't have to leave Earth to find yourself in another world.
That's for sure.
And Chris
Well,
Kurtzman said, I love tangents. It opens so many possible storylines beyond a trilogy.
Boy, that's for sure.
And let me give out your website here. Tory's website is torygatesmedia.com, TORYGATESMEDIA. And also, let's bring up your email.
Yeah, the first person to email you at torygatesmedia@outlook.com will win a book of choice.
And I leave that to whatever they would like. If you go to my website, all of my books are listed there. The links to purchase are there, and you can just see all the stuff I've done. And I hope that somebody's interested, and I'm sure they will be if they pick it up.
There you go.
All right.
All righty. Well, now let's take a look at, we're going to welcome Douglas Gardham, to the show. He's been very patiently waiting up there in Canada. How are you doing, Doug?
Hi, Doug.
I'm doing great. I'm thinking that it's quite an honor to have been invited back to your show. We had quite a great time the last time I was here, and to be alongside a number of other great authors that is kind of interesting to listen to everyone's story.
I know, but last time was a pre-record. But you didn't know that live was going to be so wild, did ya?
I was going to say it's funny because subsequently I prefer this format. There were so many things going on the day that we pre-recorded that. When you put it all together, it came out quite well. But if you knew what was happening at my end, you would just laugh.
Okay.
Someday you'll have to tell us.
Someday you'll have to spill the beans and let everybody in.
There you go.
It was just one of those things because we couldn't get the website to work on my computer, and then we're on my phone. My phone's running out of batteries. It's just it was one of those things. At the same time, I was getting a number of phone calls, so that was adding to it. So anyway, this is another event. It's been fun listening to everybody's stories, like I said, and it's cool to be here.
It's great to have you. I know that you wanted to talk about this book, The Actor. I got the.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's still the one that's kind of nearest and dearest to my heart. There's a number of different things still kind of going on with that book. So, and it's what started the whole thing. I spent a long time putting that together. It's a story really of, shall we say, coming of age, a young man's journey. I'll call it a self-discovery and overcoming a personal trauma that he does by chasing a dream. And that dream, as it turns out, is not quite what it seems. It's a story of love and dreams, hardship, and really the power of the mind, if you like. And I was very fortunate for the Globe and Mail in Canada. They did a feature on me, and they actually called the book a David Lynch-like thriller about obsession, delusion, and determination. So in Canada, the Globe and Mail is kind of like the New York Times in the US.
I was just going to ask you.
It was a pretty huge honor. But the fact that they called it a David Lynch-like thriller really meant to me that they got what the story was about. And that was kind of a really neat thing. So from that perspective, that's kind of gone on. I also have two other books. The Musician, which is a follow-up to that book, which you can kind of see there. And we also, which we talked a little bit about in the last discussion, was The Drive-In, which is my collection of short stories. And but I was going to say, with the Actor, we're now in the process of, we'd kind of gone to Hollywood to promote it a number of times, to pitch it as a movie. But with some of the recent Netflix series that have come out, in particular, I'll call this. My agent has said, like, this is one we should go and pitch as a TV series. So I'm now breaking down The Actor into a 10-part Netflix series that we're hopefully going to be pitching in the next couple of months. But I'm very excited about that.
That's
and
great.
That is great news.
So it's funny kind of going back and looking at something that you've kind of read and reread, and you've edited it and you've gone through that, you've had it out there. You were talking earlier about doing book signings. As you know, I kind of crisscross Canada and the US doing like 400 book events with the actor and my various other books. So I had been quite busy doing all of that and putting that all together for a number of years. So now to come back to the actor and to kind of see it like you can almost see the movie frames come about in your head. And so it's a number of reviews have kind of come back saying this is a movie. It reads like a movie, which for me, being a huge movie buff, which we talked about in the last discussion, it's very complimentary. And of course, being kind of linked with a truly great director, it was a very nice thing to have said about your work.
Yes. Caleb Pirtle says, Douglas lets you crawl deep inside another person's psyche. And after a while, you don't know if you can ever crawl back out again.
Oh, Caleb, thank you very much. That is, but that's kind of the intention. That's what it has ended up being my kind of way of writing. In fact, I'll talk a little bit about this as well. So when we last talked, I was just, I think, finishing up my most recent book called If You Could Read My Mind, which is another little kind of the drive-in, which is, when I say a collection of stories, it's a person driving to work. And on their way to work, they pass different houses. And the short stories are us as the reader getting to go inside those places and understanding what their story is. So If You Could Read My Mind takes us to another level of that, as far as being in your mind and being able to visit places. And those places, those events, are what become the short stories, and it all kind of connects up together. But it's the strength, I'll say, of mind and where it goes, and really how little we even know about it in our world today. So I had been mentioning, I've heard Joe talk about it, having a blog. And so once I'd finished that book and Agents got in his hands, and lots of times kind of going through, but I had wanted to return to my blog that I had started to explore some nonfiction work in. And in that nonfiction work, I have became quite fascinated with not only our mind, but a number of, so we say, things that go on from the standpoint of science. I'll call it metaphysics, and I'll call it theology. And really, I presented this, talked to him a little bit about, no, I actually didn't talk to him at all about it. And we were like 2 minutes into discussion, and he pulls out his little tablet and he goes, "Have you seen Substack before?" And I was kind of going, "No." And he starts to explain it. And it turns out it's exactly what I wanted to do. From doing all the book events, I had quite an extensive email list. And I wanted to, for like when I'd send my newsletters out as far as events coming up. And I wanted to take that newsletter and connect it with my blog and start to kind of develop kind of a series. Well, Substack is exactly what that is. So through some, whatever you want to call it, I started to begin to explore on the nonfiction side some of the thoughts. The series is called actually A Changing Frame of Reference. And it's really about my thoughts since I became a full-time writer about 10 years ago. My background is engineering. Really didn't talk about that. I spent most of my career in the, shall we say, engineering world of corporate engineering, so to speak. But creativity, the whole world, started me back when I was a teenager. I started to write songs in a band, thought that was what I was going to do, and it just didn't turn out. Well, anyway, as I started to make a living in the world of engineering, I just couldn't escape writing. I couldn't escape that whole activity. And so I started with short stories and so on. And so as I've kind of gone through that time, it started to get kind of interesting as far as when I left that world and started to come into this full-time creative world, and how my thoughts, my frame of reference started to shift as far as what I thought was, I'll say, kind of important, and how I even looked at the world. So the first thing that kind of affected this was seeing Mark Burnett and his wife Roma Downey's Bible series, and I started to realize, I started watching it, I'm kind of going like, here's a book that's I've known about my whole life, and here they've made cinematic stories out of that book that I didn't really even know like very well, and I was surprised. And so that was the first thing that started on me. I got to start looking at this a little bit differently. And then I started to read some different things. I read Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock. Has a different perspective than the archaeological world. And then Cormac McCarthy wrote an article, his first, shall we say, nonfiction science essay in the Nautilus magazine called The Kukule Problem. And he started to talk about where the unconscious came from and how language connected with it. And before I know it, I'm kind of going down a whole different look at far as how some of those major questions of our lives are. What's our purpose? Why are we here? How did we get here? That's why I got so interested in what you were dealing with on the paranormal side. And I think we talked about Area 51 even by Annie Jacobson, and reading that book and how it kind of changed how I look. So my series started literally in November. I do literally an article a week. This week is coming out as my 18th, and they all kind of go around those different areas. So now I get to explore that whole mind part, shall we say, that similar fits into my fiction world and connects the two together. So I was going to say there's a bit of an art show without any questions from you yet.
It's just really funny because everything that you just said connects all the way back to something that Jamil was saying that made me think of. I mean, according to ancient alien theorists, that's all I could think of when he was talking about gods. And what you just said now is that they would say it was aliens that came here and that set all this stuff into action. But yeah, that is a lot.
Yes, well, I was going to say that's kind of what my world has become. I'm literally on a daily basis. I'm writing parts of this weekly article, weekly piece. You can find it on Substack. You go on your phone and pick up Substack and put in Douglas Gardham, and it's a very neat thing. I actually promote it even to other authors because I think it's a great way of you being able to experiment with what you want to do. I mean, obviously, for me as an author, I'm always trying to find the perfect sentence, always trying to do better, right? I've often tweeted out, like, wouldn't it be wonderful to write a sentence down once in a while that you didn't feel like you had to go back and edit? And it's just one of those things that just continues to go on, and it doesn't really stop. So now this is a chance to be able to explore kind of two areas and see where that can kind of take it. And it will definitely expand my fiction, because that's one of the things that I like. That's my true love. That's really where it's kind of all about.
Yeah,
it's really sad because I even edit my texts. So
that's a good thing, Joan.
Well,
there's a lot of people that don't.
We have to correct the AI because the AI keeps trying to put more stuff in there that we don't want to put in there.
There you go. There you go.
I use punctuation in my texts, people.
Real English. Yeah.
So you weren't one of the ones that Jimmy Kimmel was talking about when he talked about his dad texting to him and how his text came out at the Oscars the other night.
No.
If you edit yours, then you're definitely doing good.
So Doug's email is up here on the screen. It's DougGardham@gmail.com. If you email him, the first person to email him will get a book of choice, right? Ebook.
I was going to say that's for sure. Again, The Actor is the first book of the well, it's now a trilogy, but the third book isn't out yet, but the second book is really The Actor. The Drive-In is not connected with that, but yes, that's the one.
Okay, so that's DougGardham@gmail.com. It's DOUGGARDHAM@gmail.com. And I think that you probably saw me put up his website.
For quite some time, yeah.
Yeah, it's DouglasGardham.com. So DOUGLASGARDHAM.
Yeah, and links to probably everything you do are right there on that website. So.
Yeah, I was going to say you can go to my Substack link as well via there. In fact, our latest interview is on my website connected to it as well. So everything's there.
That's awesome.
I'd like to know from all of you here, has anyone else heard of Substack?
I hadn't.
I've heard of it, but
me neither.
I didn't explore anything in it yet, but I have heard of it before.
Well, the first time I'd heard of it was, in fact, when we talked the other night, and I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. But it is interesting. It looks like it's got promise. So, yeah. By the way, that's another thing we have to look at. We have to look at any possibility. We were talking about promoting and self-promoting. We always have to find a new place to go, because it feels like after a while you're not getting any action from some of the social media. I've experimented with so many social media pages, and so many of them have just been brick walls. And it's like, if you don't see any growth, it's like, why am I still here? But it's fun to look at. It's also fun to just sort of dip into different ones and just see what's happening. So this looks like it has a possibility. So we should probably.
Any way you can get your name back out there, But some indie author keeps tagging me on these posts. Well, I heard about Substack a while ago. Oh, that was Doug.
I know we heard about it from Doug, but we haven't heard about it from anyone else.
No, I focus a lot on social media, right? So
yes,
it's like
yes,
our interview has been fairly popular as far as well as being out there too.
Yeah, I would like to just comment on that just a little bit. Every one of you guys that are here tonight have made a big impact on our last year as far as downloads. So
huge impact.
Hats off. Tip of the hat to you guys.
Thank you.
You're all pretty popular, each one of you.
You're all popular, and with 22,000 downloads just on the podcast alone, you guys have been out there a lot out of those 22,000. So, I mean, yay you. Good job.
Thank you.
It's nice to hear that.
We'll pat ourselves on the back.
Yeah, seriously. Doing a really great job.
As well you should.
And we appreciate you being on this show and bearing with us. And I know it's gone on a long time, and Doug, you had to wait a long while.
Well, he's 3 hours behind us, so it's okay.
No, it's not okay.
It's been extremely interesting, though. Like everybody else said, listening to everyone's story, it's been fantastic to hear. I've enjoyed it.
I've enjoyed it a lot too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
Definitely.
Doug, your journey, pardon my saying this, but at your age, it's interesting that you came into at this point in your life of, listening to Mark Burnett and then going on from there. And that fascinates me.
Joan, I think it was always dormant inside. Like I don't think, in fact, when I talk about this sometimes, it's been quite a shift in some ways, but in other ways it's like I'm coming back home. Like it's just like it's kind of like I went through like I said, in my teens, I was pretty set to know what I was going to do. And then like we had a band, we were playing clubs, and then one of the members decided they were going to go to university, to college, and the band broke up, and that was almost like a family breakup for me. Mm-hmm. And so I had to kind of figure out what I was going to do. And of course, all pressure is usually like you got to make a living somehow or other. And so I was good at math and science, and that's what brought me to the engineering world. Fortunate that I could do that, and then from there graduating and then spend the time. But the interesting part for me was how the writing came back like I just couldn't let it go. I've always been interested in the arts. I find it just I think and if we don't have the arts, what are we here for, to be really honest with you? And it connects with so many things. So whether you're and I think literature is an enormous part of that. I think where that kind of grows from. So even though you have responsibilities, and like I'm hearing Jamil's working and GENARO's working and doing their full-time jobs, just fitting in like that 5 o'clock in the morning to write for an hour. Like you live that for a long time. And I would have to give kind of credit to Stephen King for bringing, I think, that forward, because he was one of the first that I'd ever heard that like an author writes like every day. Like, and so when that started to kind of come together, it got to the point where like, okay, I just can't keep doing this double life. Now it's 20 years after I'd been working and doing those things, but it's like now you're kind of in that mode where you're getting a chance to, or I feel I'm getting a chance to do what I should have done my whole life. In actual fact, I was doing it. And now, like just being on this podcast today is just like, it's a reality check. I don't know about the others feel this way, but like, here's that, like when I was writing the actor like 15 years ago, you're kind of going, oh man, when I get to be in an interview and talking about this work and what you're doing. And it's like, it becomes very much, it's like you're doing this because you can't help yourself.
That's right.
Like, and there's just, you keep going and you're saying like, okay, no, there's got to be an easier way. But it doesn't stop. And I find that like it's an effort. Like the stuff doesn't come like real easy all the time. It's like, in fact, most of the time, well, that's why I said about the sentence, like how many times you write a sentence and then you reread it and you're going like, oh, and I thought that was a good sentence. And that's one sentence of how many thousand that you put into a book, right?
Well, that's for sure. Right?
And then you say, well, I'll give it to an editor. And now the editor will make it all easy and go away. When we find, oh, now we're double. But it is incredibly gratifying that, like, I found that recently, even doing the Substack writing, that because it's given me like a deadline that I put on myself on, and it's like, okay, I think it was Toni Morrison's. It's something like, I write so I can figure out what I'm actually thinking about. And I think it's true. Like, it's one of those things, is like writing allows you to actually put your thoughts together to say like, okay, this is really something, a thought. It's not just something that wasn't there, and there's something I can expand on it with. And that's to me, what is the thrill about, I'll call it art in general, right? Is like, it's coming from it's interesting, but I mean, when you read fiction and you write fiction, whether other people think that is good, shall we say, has a name, the fact that you're the one creating it, or whoever is writing it, it's coming from a place that's no one else has ever come from before. Mm-hmm. It's like, I know the world recognizes certain figures on it, but like when we're writing, it's what makes it something really special is that like what you've written, the world's never seen before. Like, because it's from you, it's from your heart, and that's why I laugh when I hear people talking about, well, what was your target market, or as Joe said earlier on about genre, what's your genre? Well, like, genre is for readers. It's not from what I write to. It's what's trying to come out of me. So it's fine. I find it just incredibly fascinating, and listen to everybody's story today. It's been like, because I think most of us have written fiction stories except for GENARO.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how like his story, even not being fiction, is still incredibly from his heart. Like, it's just like he's exploding on our screen as he tells us about what it's about. And so like I said, I find it really an interesting act that this art of writing has brought us to. So I couldn't be more thrilled, like I said, to be for sure invited here, but also to be a chance to talk about what we do.
that's what I loved about tonight, is that every single person had so much passion for what they do.
Absolutely.
And you could see the passion and feel the passion, you know. And that's great. I mean, I love watching Jamil laugh and talk about his characters. It's so great. When Rob and I first started writing and our characters became real people, it shocked me. It was like, I am so invested in them, you know, and they're real to me.
But we couldn't get them to pay rent.
No.
I had dreams about them, like I did last night. It's crazy.
Well, if I may, it's an interesting thing that your characters really do become, they are real to you because they are real to us. And a lot of characters may be just someone who came out of thin air, or they're combinations of people we know or people we don't like, and we can clear them off. But
you can murder them,
or do whatever else you wish. But it's kind of like I guess my main thought, I guess, about that is you really do start talking to them. You start interviewing them. You start listening to them. And I love to say it. One of my closest friends and a former girlfriend of mine once pretty much accused me of sleeping with my characters. And I want to think that she meant that in a good-natured way. And I said, well, not like that. But it's one of those things where you really do have to sort of, you're the other person in the room, or you're like having that discussion with a character who is dealing with something, and it's like, all right, well, how are you going to deal with this? And sometimes I just have them talk to me and just be like, all right, what am I missing about your character? What am I missing about your attitude, or what you want to do, or whatever? And you realize that it's taken a long time, but it's a useful conversation, because now you can add that to the character. You can write it in, you can develop more. So I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. And I mean, I've worked in broadcasting for almost 40 years, and we all talk to ourselves. We all talk to each other because we're in a studio most of the time alone. And yes, and I've had people ask me, do you talk to yourself? Or they catch me doing it. And I'm like, yes, I do. I do it all the time. And it's how we keep focused, but that's also how we develop and we create, and these things become real. And I remember a couple of years ago, I did this. I completely forgot where I was, and I began talking out a rather nasty discussion between two characters, and I suddenly realized I'm at work. Okay.
Live on the air.
Well, no, I wasn't on the air. Thankfully, I was not. I would have been in a lot of trouble. But no, I was just walking through the building, and I suddenly realized some of my coworkers can hear this, and I didn't get anything back from them, so maybe they did. Maybe no one heard it. But it was just one of those moments where you get a good laugh out of it, and you're like, oh, well, they know who I am, so it's okay.
I might be stealing your idea there, Tori, because that's a pretty cool concept of sleeping.
Go right ahead.
I'm sure he's not
Really
the only one to have ever
good
done it.
concept.
Let me read this so that people who are listening to the podcast will hear it. Caleb Pirtle said, just like sports, put a good team together and you have a great game. Rob Joan, you put a good team together and had a great show. So thank you, Caleb. Chris Chrisman says, awesome show. So many great stories by authors, for authors. Linda Pernell said, enjoyed listening to each of you. And Paul Hollis said, great evening. Thank you, one and all, an informative show. And it has.
Yeah, and I think we rolled past the 2 hours.
Yeah, we said it would be an hour and a half, and we went 2 hours.
We were just kidding. So,
hey, think about what it would be if we all did a reading.
Oh, now Marjorie, are you going to finish? No,
I tried to keep it short.
Yeah. You got another 18 minutes. No, okay, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. It's been a really wonderful time. Split, thank you for coming back and spending your time with us. And
thank you for the audience for making 100 episodes a success.
Yeah. And,
Well, thank you to you guys too, because it was an honor just to be asked to be on.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
The show.
I completely agree.
The 100
Thanks.